Welcome everyone to another episode in this series of Unlearning the Falsehoods. Slowly and steadily, we are uncovering a few layers in our history, things that were taught to us in the form of history and culture in our history textbooks and school. I guess we have uncovered a few of the things, and majority of us are really aware that our history textbooks are largely, a product of propaganda. So I guess, yeah, deep down, all of us know that the way our history was taught to us was not exactly how it went about, how things were done, or how the other party behaved and whatnot. So far we have managed to establish that Congress, that claimed to be the national body or the national mouthpiece during that period of time, and yes. You can argue that Congress definitely was a political body, a single political body at that point in time. There were other smaller organizations as well that were established before Congress, but those organizations did not have the sanctions of the British. Okay. So keep in mind, we have also discussed this theory of safety valve, meaning the National Congress that was led by the moderates, the so called moderates, that became popular all throughout this territory, is a myth. Okay, the National Congress was not exactly very popular all throughout the country. If indeed it was very popular throughout the country, JL Nehru, after the transfer of power in 47, would not have to go from villages to seek votes. Okay, so the myth that has been propagated that the National Congress, okay, was actually the national body or the national mouthpiece of the natives is actually partially untrue. I would want to say, yes, it was the voice of the people at that time, but you cannot claim National Congress cannot claim to be the sole spokesperson for the entire mass or entire populace of the country, for which many of them were not aware what is the science of politics, who is a moderate, who is an extremist, what are the interests. Okay, so you cannot claim to speak on behalf of the mass of the population. They might speak, they might be a partial mouthpiece, but then they weren't the absolute mouthpiece. All right, so yes, so far we have established Congress was fragmented into two parts, namely the moderates and the extremists. Extremist is a misnomer. I would call them nationalists. And many of the books out in the public domain, they also call them nationalists. But you will find that some of the historians who lean towards the left end of the political spectrum, they would like to call them as extremists. And some of them have also gone far to call them terrorists. Okay, but that is an agenda for a different video. Right now we are going to focus about right after the partition. Okay, right after the partition of Bengal, what was the backdrop, what was the scenario? There were underground revolutionary societies that came up in Bengal. Okay, when I say Bengal comprises of the current day Bangladesh, Assam, some parts of Tripura and Mizoram as well, and the entire state of West Bengal, some parts of Odisha as well. So this region was very fertile with underground revolutionary societies. Okay, and nationalists, okay, there isn't exactly clear evidence about this, but it makes sense. Okay, nationalists, they had some ties or some bonds, as they should have, and they must have had. Okay, they had some bonds with the revolutionaries as well. All right, now what it did was, okay, there were clear fragments right after the partition. The nationalists were of the opinion that there has to be some sort of a resistance, active, passive, both. We cannot stick to the constitutional means. Okay, so let's read in their own words what were the specific positions of the moderates and of the nationalists right after the partition. Okay, so first we'll go with the moderate position. Moderate position was well articulated by Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who is a political mentor of Mohandas Gandhi, a character that we will discuss in the future parts of this series. But right now we are going to focus on Gokhale. Okay, these are his words. Okay, not mine. Gokhale argued against severance of relationship with the British Empire because he believed that there was room within the empire for a self-respecting India to achieve its aspirations with minimum disturbance of existing ideas. For the same reason, he categorically denounced the nationalist doctrine of passive resistance on the grounds that the policy was impractical, injurious, and would have effect of altering the foundations of public life. Okay, he was of the opinion that um, I would say he didn't say this out loud, but since he is pandering towards the British, okay, I would think that somewhere in the back of the head he believes that the native race, the pagan race, does not have the intellectual capital to exist enough as a sovereign country or as a sovereign nation. That is what he might be thinking, because he is the one who is espousing this cause that we must support the British and not the nationalists. This was the position of the moderates. They were willing to live under the British rule, and what they were demanding was similar rights and powers and authorities at par with all the other colonies. Okay, I would say now during these times, people had become aware. This information had spread wide in the elite educated circles, that there indeed were other colonies as well. It was not just us who was resisting this British or foreign influence. There were other countries as far as Australia, and even some African countries as well. So moderates were of the opinion that we could learn to live with the British or under the British rule or domination. Now let's look at the nationalist position. Nationalist position was very well captured by most of the leaders, because in a sense they were very clear what they wanted. Moderates, up to a certain extent, their writings reflect that they were not really sure what they needed. They said that they were going to move forward with the constitutional methods of and whatnot, but there was no clear charted route. Okay, they were going on an ad hoc basis. Whatever comes up, we'll sit and discuss, will implement the best possible solution that we have come up with. Whereas the nationalists, they were very well articulate in their ideology, very well articulate in their chart, that I'll discuss in the further part of this video. So this is the nationalist position that was very well articulated. Let's see. Okay, this is Bal Gangadhar Tilak, somebody who has been totally sidelined at the expense of the moderate leaders, and our textbooks rarely speak about him. But a man of his intellect and erudition must be brought to the mainstream for the people to understand what exactly was going on inside the Congress. Okay, so this is Bal Gangadhar Tilak. These are his writings. This is boycott. We shall not have their goods. We shall not have them. We shall not give them assistance to collect revenue and to keep peace. We shall not assist them in fighting beyond the frontiers or outside India with Indian blood and money. We shall not assist them in carrying on the administration of justice. We shall have our own courts, and when time comes, we shall not pay taxes. Can you do that by your united efforts? If you can, you are free from tomorrow. Okay, these were the ideas and thoughts of Bal Gangadhar Tilak, who was a nationalist to the core. What he said is, if you stop following law from tomorrow onwards, okay, these are the germs and the seeds of the non-cooperation and civil disobedience movement that Mohandas Gandhi conveniently takes the credit for. Or rather, he did not take the credit for. It was this Marxist historians who are hell-bent on crediting Mohandas Gandhi for things that he did not indeed do. Okay, so these are the seeds and ideas of non-cooperation and civil disobedience according to the nationalist position. So indeed, these ideas of passive resistance or passive aggression came from the nationalistic thought. Here he is talking about stop following their laws, stop assisting them in administration, because by this time, during the the first decade of the 1900s, majority of the pagan natives had adopted this education. They had learned their language, they had cleared examinations, and now they had occupied some positions in the administration. Okay, so from tomorrow onwards, if they would stop going to their jobs, if they would boycott their exported goods that they brought in here, it would really hurt them. Okay, so these were the ideas of Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Okay, now let's look at the other ideas. There was another specific individual who was pretty much very well nationalistic to the core, and he was classified as an extremist. He was a member of the Congress. That individual is Aurobindo Ghosh. Okay, like I said, Bengal was a fertilized bedrock of revolutionaries. People over there, they do not respond well with unjust authority. They do not respond well to unjust authority. Okay. So let's see what Aurobindo Ghosh had to say. Okay, he was more of the, I would say, he was more of, he advocated more of passive, passive resistance, meaning let's look at what he said. Lawful abstention from any kind of cooperation with the government. Lawful abstention, meaning, let's say, for example, from tomorrow onwards, government comes up with a law that you're not allowed to cycle on the highways, or you're not allowed to use your bicycle on main roads or highways. Okay, so what was Aurobindo Ghosh advocating? That you take your cycle, go to the highways, let the government arrest you, let the law take its course. Okay, this was what he was advocating. This is, again, these are the germs and the seeds of non-cooperation and civil disobedience that Mohandas Gandhi conveniently misappropriates in the name of satyagraha and in the name of civil disobedience and non-cooperation. Up to a certain extent, I would also not blame him, because this is the Marxist historians have credited him with things that he indeed did not do. Okay, but more about it in the further parts of the series. But this is, yes, these are the ideas of non-cooperation and civil disobedience that actually came from the nationalist faction of Congress, not the moderates or the liberals. Okay. So now what happened was, there was this clear distinction. There was this clear distinction in approach in within the Congress itself. There was one part of the Congress who was willing to capitulate to the British, function under their tutelage, and let them take the steering, and they were happy just taking a back seat and let them rule and follow their rules and regulations, and all they would do is protest and pray through constitutional methods. Whereas on the other side, there were nationalists. Okay, here is the appeal to your reason. Okay, is the current day politics of our country any different? Okay, you will find one set of political parties who will pander to the West, meaning everything that comes out from the West is the gospel. Okay, we have to follow them, we have to do what they are doing, we have to follow the trends which they create and whatnot. Okay, those will be one set of political parties, usually towards the left, and there will be other political parties. Okay, they would advocate like reviving our own cultural traditions, festivals and whatnot. So we will classify them as towards the right. Okay, and to this very day, this is like a live example of entrenched coloniality. Okay, we still function in that manner. Yes. So there was this 1907 session of Congress in Surat. Okay, now this, I would say, this was a very important session of the Congress, because what happened over here was, the differences, the fissures between the moderates and the nationalists, it came to the fore, and it took real life manifestations. Okay, what the Congress did was, they wrote up a constitution. Who wrote up that constitution? Obviously, the moderates. Okay, moderates came up with this idea of the constitution of the Congress, not the entire country. That will come in the further parts of this series. But the moderate leaders of Congress, they came up with this idea of writing down or drafting down a constitution. Rather, it was a charter. We cannot call that a constitution, a charter of the Congress. And according to the charter, and according to the Article 1, okay, I'm going to read down verbatim. This is not me paraphrasing. This was the charter of the National Congress that was drawn up in 1907. Okay, let's focus on their words, because words don't lie. The object of the Indian National Congress are the attainment by the people of India of a system of government similar to that enjoyed by self governing members of the British Empire. So they're not advocating. The charter of the National Congress itself says that we do not want complete and utter sovereignty. What we want is dominion status within the British Empire, like others, Australia and all the other colonies, and a participation by them in the rights and responsibilities of the empire on equal terms with those members. These objects are to be achieved by the constitutional means by bringing about a steady reform of the existing system of administration and by promoting national unity, fostering public spirit, and developing and organizing the intellectual, moral, economic, and industrial resources of the country. Okay, so in essence, what the charter of the National Congress that was drafted by the moderates, what do they mean to say is, all right, we do not want complete independence, and now from this point forwards, anybody who joins this, I would say, political community, it wasn't exactly a political party, okay, whoever joins this political community has to commit to this article in writing. Okay, you need to write it and give it to the Congress that you are not going to support complete sovereignty or independence. You are going to support dominion status. This tells you a lot about the connivance and the nexus between the moderates and the British. All right. Yes, so these are, I would say, the seeds. Okay. Now, what happened during these are the writings of, again, a national icon, Bal Gangadhar Tilak. These are his writings, and this is the idea that he has captured, okay, about the means and the methods of the moderates. Okay, this is Tilak writing. Let's see what he has to say. The Indian people must adopt the way of resistance to achieve complete rights of Swarajya and to eliminate all differences between the blacks and the whites. Nothing will be gained by petitions, pleas, or conciliations. Those who still want to remain moderate may remain so. We do not quarrel over words, but make the definition of moderate so broad that it will even include the determination to be ready to go to jail by intentionally breaking the tyrannical laws of the government. Here is talking about that if there are any laws that you see, okay, that the British have made and that you think are unjust and unfair, break those laws. Let them arrest you. Let the law take its course. Okay, this is something similar what Mohandas Gandhi did during Dandi March, during civil disobedience. But this is Tilak articulating that specific idea in 1907. Okay, when you have the determination to do this, whether it is done moderately or extremely, on that day we will be saved. Otherwise, remember that slavery which is written on your forehead will never end. Okay, you must have the gall, you must have the balls. Okay, that is what indeed Tilak was saying, and 10-20 years later, that is what Mohandas Gandhi would eventually end up doing, but he will be classified as a moderate. Okay, so much for our history textbooks. Okay, so many lies, I would say. So yes, they came up with a constitution. Similarly, we have forgotten that okay, there were people, I would say, do you really think that National Congress during 1907, did it have the people's mandate? Do you really think that? I don't think so, that Congress had people's mandate. Like I said, number one was they were drafting all their documents and all their charters in English. Okay, so I would say less than 3% of the entire population was literate in English during that time, and those who were literate, amongst them only elites had the leisure and the resources to participate in the body that was Congress. Okay, so indeed, I wouldn't say that Congress had the mandate. It is just that it was a safety valve theory taken up by the British that is signified, that is pretty much apparent in all their writings and all their positions that they have so far taken. Okay. Parallelly, there was also another political organization that was gaining power, that was, and it had a pretty deep and solid background. That was All India Muslim League. Okay, they had managed to carve out a separate province by the name of Eastern Bengal. Okay, keep in mind, All India Muslim League was established after the partition of Bengal, not prior. So, okay, after the partition of Bengal, they had realized what can political unity do? How can it take care of their own political interests? Okay, so yes, the Muslim League. They held their second session when 1907, the Surat session, where the split between the moderates and the nationalists came to the fore in National Congress. Parallelly, there was the Karachi session of Muslim League in 1907, where they came out with this demand of separate electorates. Okay, they wanted separate electorates. This is in 1907. Okay, so in a sense, there were uh, three fronts at play for the British, where the British needed to maneuver to keep their interests in check. Okay, number one was obviously Congress, and within the Congress, the nationalists. That is number one, that posed as a threat to British sovereignty in Bharat. Number two is the Muslim League, by that extension, Muslims, okay, with whom they had formed a mutual beneficial alliance, an alliance of convenience to keep the nationalists in check. Okay, the third and the very important front on which the British were fighting a threat to their sovereignty was the revolutionary front. Okay, there were many assassinations that were undertaken by the natives, being frustrated with the inaction of the Congress. Right, there were political assassinations taken place, and I would say the British have behaved in a pretty, in a way that I would say we can sit and argue whether they behaved justly or not, but they hung people. Okay, they have hung people as young as 17, 18-year olds for assassination. Okay, so yes, there were assassinations going on. So the British, they became conscious about the fact that indeed there was this revolutionary fervor. Okay, nationalists in the Congress, like I said, they indeed were nationalists, but they had drawn a line at passive resistance, meaning, okay, we'll break the law, but we'll allow the law to take its course. We will face the law, we will face justice. Let's see what happens. Okay, but the extremists, they went to the extent of political assassinations. And okay, and to give you a glimpse into the morals and ethics of the revolutionaries, they let the law take its course as well. There were some revolutionaries that tried to run in the beginning, but there were also some revolutionaries who committed the crime and willingly faced the law and went to the gallows and got hanged for their country. Okay, but more about them in the upcoming videos in this series. But yes, there was also a revolutionary front that was brewing, and something that the British thought that had to be kept in check. All right, uh, on top of a check on the revolutionary front, the British were also pretty much aware that now that the pagan native had learned the language of English, there was copious amount of literature that was coming out. There were newspapers, there were daily newspapers, there were magazines, there were pamphlets that had started being published in the language of English, and those pamphlets were being translated in vernacular languages, and there was spread across the geography. Okay, and the British, they realized this. Some of the nationalist publications were Yugantar, Bande Matram, Sandhya. Kesari is one newspaper with which Bal Gangadhar Tilak was associated, and he was also, sent to jail on charges of sedition. Okay, that will cover it. But yes, what happened was the British, they realized this, that press is a medium through which these ideas were spreading, these ideas of independence, because the moderate ideas were not finding too much of currency. There were moderate authors, there were moderate people who were publishing newspapers and whatnot, and they had British backing. Okay, they had the backing of the British, and hence on paper there is a case to be made that the moderate literature was more famous. But indeed, the ideas of the nationalists were resonating hard with the common man. Okay, and they were also being translated into vernacular languages, and hence they had to come up with specific laws okay, specific laws and the definition of seditious literature, that any literature, any piece of literature who advocates, overthrow of the Majesty's government, they would qualify as seditious, and hence they need to shut down. Okay, so they shut down press. One such newspaper was Kesari. Who was associated with Kesari? Again, Bal Gangadhar Tilak. He has written quite extensively on multiple issues. But yes, after the political assassinations, the British, they were of the opinion that the writings of Bal Gangadhar Tilak, they were pretty much, they pretty much had a heavy revolutionary flavor, and Tilak was arrested under the provisions of seditions of the IPC 124A. Guess who was the barrister representing him? Jinnah. Yes, Jinnah was the one who was representing Bal Gangadhar Tilak in the court of law. Unfortunately, he could not save Tilak, and Tilak had to go to jail for 6 years on the charges of sedition, where he was sent to Burma. He is going to be released in 1914. That we'll discuss in the upcoming video. But yes, press was also gagged. Let's come to bureaucracy. How did the bureaucracy behave? The current that we have, IAS and IPS, during 1900s, and the initial decade of the 1900s, how did the bureaucracy behave? They had this position of repression. No nationalistic sentiment, no nationalistic idea should be allowed to be promoted. Okay, you would be shocked to know to this very day we continue with this policy in bureaucracy. No nationalistic idea is allowed to be promoted. Okay, maybe the things are moving faster in the current dispensation. Again, although that is a debatable argument, but yes, to this very day, bureaucracy, the entire structure of bureaucracy, that it moves at a moves at a snail's pace, and with the ideology of liberalism. But yeah, that is again an agenda for a different video. Now, this is something that is very important, the highlight of this video. Okay, there was an individual who goes by the name of Sayyid Ali Imam. Sayyid Ali Imam, in the 1908, okay, this was the session of Muslim League, All India Muslim League, that was held in 1908. Sayyid Ali Imam, in future he goes on to become the Prime Minister of the Hyderabad state under the Nizam. This is he giving a speech at All India Muslim League session. Okay, his articulation of the idea of the difference between the non-converted pagan natives and the converted Muslims being two separate nations is spot on. Nobody could have articulated this idea better than him, not even Sayyid Ahmad Khan. Okay, so let's read what he has to say. This is his speech, these are his words, I'm quoting him verbatim. Okay, let's see what he has to say. Islam, in its worldwide career and conquest and conversion, met on Indian soil with a resistance which had little of the admirable military prowess of the Hindus. What Hindu chivalry was powerless to protect, Hindu ethics, Hindu philosophy, Hindu social system had made impregnable. Okay, what he is alluding towards here, that let's say for the sake of argument, assume, okay, we are assuming this is not the case. This is a, somebody would argue that no, there was a heroic Hindu resistance as well, but let's assume for the sake of argument that militarily the native pagan rulers, they were not able to subdue the efforts of Islam to convert them. Okay, so here what is Sayyid Ali Imam saying? What the military prowess of the pagan natives could not achieve, okay, what was the, I would say, what was the second layer of protection? Second layer of protection was ethics, philosophy, and the social system. So the very same thing, okay, very same thing that is relegated to, relegated as something that is old-fashioned and patriarchy and Brahminical patriarchy, something that was second layer of defense against our, the pagan nature of our population. The social system, the ethics, the philosophy, something that we say as though it is old age, it has no use anymore. That is something that has managed to shield us from, the onslaught of Islam. Okay. Centuries rolled by, these are again his words, not mine. Centuries rolled by, but the conqueror and the conquered, in a point of nationality, character, and creed, suffered not from their political association. Okay, although there might have been, aggressive conversions, but there was never a political association. Characteristics of race and religion and political and social ideals of the two presented irreconcilabilities. In the East, religion enters into very life of the people. The social relations of the Indian Muslim and the Hindu have not yet received geniality of a common dinner table nor the sacrament or legal sanction of matrimony. This is a person, this is the president of the All India Muslim League speaking at the 1908 session of that political community. That there is no political association between the pagan natives and the converted Muslims of Bharat. This is not me saying. Okay, the two communities from the truly social point of view are as far apart today as they were 1,000 years ago. So this, if this person is saying it in 1908, okay, why was it that in 1947 onwards we were fed these lies of Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb and secularism? Something for you to ponder about. Okay, let's come further. What else does he have to say? It is clear, therefore, that apart from ethnic diversity of character, the two communities have nothing in common in their traditional, religious, social, and political conceptions. So that's here he's saying completely, both these races are completely different, traditionally, religiously, socially, and politically. There must be something imperishable in the cherished beliefs of both. Okay, each has so far passionately clung to its own. Under such conditions, the fusion of the two cannot be predicated. Okay, the verdict of history is that in holding India under subjection for centuries, the Mohammedan held only her body and not her soul. Okay, although okay, the rulers of Islam might have been able to rule over this geography of Bharat for, let's say, 3 centuries. Let's give or take, let's be generous, let's say 4 centuries. Okay, so they might have been able, okay, to get a hold of her body, but not her soul. The soul of Bharat inevitably remains pagan, rooted in Vedic scriptures. This is the president of All India Muslim League saying, not me, in 1908. Wasn't he aware about Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb? Okay. Wasn't he aware of the principle of secularism? Again, our history textbooks will conveniently hide this. Okay. So yes. So we come to the end of this video. But before coming to the end of this video, I would really want to raise a very pertinent question. Okay. The British back home, okay, they had a pretty homogeneous society. Either you are a Catholic, either you are a Protestant, and you are supposed to form a nation state. But within that nation state, you're supposed to keep in mind or, accommodate the rights of the minorities. When I say minorities, okay, those are minorities within the Christian domination, not completely different from their own native faith. Okay, so back home in the UK, they had a pretty straightforward homogeneous society. Okay, but in the subcontinent of Bharat, in this part of the world, they were fighting, like I said, multiple fronts. One was the moderates, another one was nationalists, one that was completely different was the Muslim front, another one was the revolutionary front. Okay, so they had too much of a diversity, and this was beyond their comprehension. Why exactly? Beyond their comprehension, that how exactly do we manage to administer them, okay, while at the same time keeping our interests in mind. Okay, so if the British establishment of the view, okay, that Western representative institutions were unsuited for Bharat, okay, they indeed knew deep down within themselves, they knew that the same institutions that we have back home would not be suitable for Bharat. They very well knew. Then why exactly did they implement all those laws? Why exactly did they set up all those institutions? Could the blame be placed at the door of the British? We will explore this question in the further episodes of this series. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching.